Most online entrepreneurs have started a Facebook community at some point or another, and one of the questions that I get asked the most is, how do I revive this community? I've taken some time off or I've neglected my group. I stopped posting. It wasn't working. It's been sitting there for months or even years. What do I do next? This is super common and it's totally fine. We don't have to guilt or shame ourselves because we took a break from a project, right? Because we went a different direction. The good news is you can revive your group. We can also assess whether you should revive the group or start a new one. I believe we've done other episodes about that, but we'll touch on that briefly. But today we are going to talk about 4 steps that I took to revive my group and get engagement from about 15% to 52% in just 2 weeks. But before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to share about another podcast called Called to Both. This podcast is hosted by my dear friend, Joy Michelle, who you guys might remember. She's been on the Messy Success podcast a few times. And her podcast is for ambitious women chasing both business dreams and their little ones. One of my favorite episodes includes Joy's top 3 hacks for working just 20 hours a week. That is episode 62. Joy is incredible at this. I always watch her from the outside in and I'm like, how does she do it? How is all of her promotional stuff, her graphics, her brand so incredible and on point? And I know that she works daycare hours. Like we're talking half day hours, 20 hours a week. That episode is amazing, as are all of them. And just make sure you can find her podcast by searching Called to Both on iTunes or any of your podcast platforms. So check her out, Joy Michelle at Called to Both. And let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Messy Success Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Henson, and I help high-performing artists and creative leaders grow and scale communities so that marketing is easy. This podcast combines business tips and real-life experiences in being the creative entrepreneur that we all are. So you're in the right place if you want to leave feeling a little bit more confident and normalize these day-to-day struggles that we all experience as business owners. And you can do this while mastering your marketing so that business is light and easy. I'm so glad you're joining me here where we can get a little bit messy, a little bit creative, and it's okay to be super ambitious. Let's get started. All right, my friends, let's talk about how to revive that Facebook group. I went to my dashboard of questions that my community members ask, and it was the one that jumped right out at me. How do I revive my community? Because I feel like this was also discussed a few posts back, which I'm going to tell you about, where I asked the polarizing question of, have you given up on your Facebook group? And it started some really great conversations. So including like, I need to revive it, or should I revive it? So we're going to talk about 4 ways that I just used in the last 2 weeks. This is all incredibly timely. This just happened. I just sent this out in an email to my Accountability Rockstar group, which is a very small group of people who have raised their hand saying they wanted to be held accountable to this simple marketing system that is posting in your group 3 to 5 times a week and sending 1 email newsletter. That's it, you guys. That is your marketing plan in, I was going to say in your pocket. There you go, in your pocket. You have a Facebook community and you post 3 to 5 times a week and you send an email newsletter. Boom, marketing plan done. And I shared with them behind the scenes in real time over the last 2 weeks. My Monday email 2 or 3 Mondays ago was, you guys, my engagement is way down. Like the lowest I think I have seen it since I started the group, probably like 15%. And I said, I'm going to try to revive it and I'm going to share with you what I do and let's just see what happens. And I'm going to be honest, I wasn't feeling as confident as I felt 3 months ago because the group has grown to over 500 members. And I know there's a little bit of a hump in these groups as they start to get bigger. And we see lots of engagement when they're small because the numbers just work in our favor. And then as they get bigger and close to 1,000, we start to see numbers drop. And I have seen it in multiple groups that I was helping with. That 500 to 700 member hump is a real thing. So I said, okay, I'm going to follow my gut and use my strategies. And if it doesn't work, then I'm just going to have to show up and tell them that it didn't work and what I'm going to try next. And I just committed to that. So I let them know that my engagement was down and I was going to try a couple things. I was going to be more present. I was going to revive some old posts. I was going to go live and obviously continue with my conversation starters and just see what happens. So 1 week went by and I did bump some old posts and had some conversation starters, and we saw engagement trending in the right direction. I think it was up to 27%, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. So it did jump up significantly, but I still wanted to get it closer to that 40%. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, we can do this. And then these 4 things are what I saw be the heavy hitters in that second week, combined with the efforts of the first week, that then got us to 52% engagement in just 2 weeks. Now, I know you're probably like, Liz, this is the promise in your freebie, so why are you over here like surprised? Well, this is different. This is a different situation. I have more members, and I was trying to revive a group, not necessarily, start one from scratch or just focus on conversation starters. And now that I'm saying this, I'll have to go back to that freebie and add some of these points because, I'm just learning. I'm learning incredibly fast. And I made that freebie, a year and a half ago. So we're going to add it in, y'all. Now that I've said that out loud, that's what we're going to do. So if you haven't grabbed that free guide, we'll put it in the show notes. This is episode 117. So you'll go to elizabethhenson.co/E117. There we go. Okay, so let's dive into the 4 things that I did. The first thing that I think is the most important for you to do, no matter what's going on in your Facebook group, is to look at the data and to make sure that you are tracking that active engagement number. And all you do for that is you go to your Facebook group settings and you go down to active members, and you can choose over the last 30 days, over the last week, however you want to measure it, just keep it consistent. And you divide the number of active members by the number of total members, and you get a percentage, and that is it. So I knew when I looked at my number this morning, and it was in the 200s out of a 500 member group, that we were back on track. And it was 52%, which is great. That is more than the percentage of people that see my stuff on Instagram, way more. Even though I have 3,500 followers on Instagram and only 500 in my Facebook group, if 50% are seeing my posts in my Facebook group, that is more than the average Instagram post gets. Isn't that insane? And like I said in another episode, it should look different because this is second base. People have gone through a little bit more effort to join and engage in the community than they do just to see my stuff on Instagram, right? So it should look a little bit different, but I was thrilled. So that's the first thing I did is I made sure that I knew my numbers. I knew where I was, which was at that, 15%. And I knew where I wanted to get was over 40%. So you need to know your numbers. You need to know where you are and where you want to be. And the bigger your group is, it's okay if it drops below 40%. If you're going to see these changes happen over time, it's very similar to the way we look at open rates in an email list, right? If you have a small email list, you have a higher chance of having a stronger open rate. If you have this huge list that you've grown over 8 years, you're going to see a lower open rate. So there's room there, and that's why you have to be the scientist of your own group and know your numbers and know where you are, where you want to be. So that was the first thing I did, is get really clear on the data and my numbers. Then I wanted to continue to ask conversation starters, but I said, Liz, I gotta do something a little different. Okay, I gotta be a little more polarizing or ask something more bold. So I started with these questions that say, just curious. And I said, just curious, who has given up on your Facebook group? I had no idea how this was going to perform, you guys, but it did awesome. People dove right in, and the one person's like, I haven't, I'm good. And then most people were saying like, oh, like I'm just frustrated, or I took a break, or I need to go over there and give it some TLC. Like people just dove right into the conversation. And this was pleasing to me because I had a couple of conversation starters like not really perform well lately. And, looking at it as, a scientist and not as an emotional business owner, it was because they were just too general. They were too general. They were kind of boring. They're what you're seeing in a lot of the groups. And I just needed to be more specific and more polarizing. So continue to ask thought-provoking questions, conversation starters that are quick and easy to answer. And whatever problem your group solves, be a little polarizing. If you teach email marketing, say, has anyone given up on email marketing? Or, what's not working? Or let me know if your email open rates stink, right? Like, let's just be a little bit more bold and in our power in how we show up in our groups. So that was the second thing. The third thing I did is I just made sure that I was continuing to invite new members. And luckily, last week, for whatever reason, we saw a little pop of new members, nothing crazy, probably like 5 new members in a week, which is a really healthy, normal growth rate, but nothing out of this world, right? And they came from the newsletter opt-in that is like starting to really get momentum on Pinterest. I shared on Instagram at one point or another. I shared on the podcast. Like, I'm not 100% sure where those new members came from, but I know that I intentionally continued to invite people, and we had, luckily a nice little pop of new members, and that always brings big energy to the group. So anytime you get a handful of new members, assuming you have your onboarding all set up, like I have taught you guys, you're going to see these new members jump right in and participate. So getting new members into the group is a great way to get your engagement back up. So that was a huge win. And again, we're continuing to figure out what works and what doesn't work and different ways to drive traffic to the group. But that was a huge win. That's number 3. And then the fourth one is I made sure to go live. So I haven't been live in the group for a while, and part of this was because I just needed the break. I've been, very busy with a lot of my client work, and also I just wanted to do a little bit of an experiment and see, are the lives really making a big difference? Because some of them get engagement, some of them not as much, and I wanted to see for myself if going live made the numbers go up. And it did. So I had my friend Marvin go live with me last week. And even though the video itself didn't get a ton of engagement, it really helped boost the eyes in the group altogether, which is where part of that active member number comes from. Doesn't always come directly from likes and comments. It's how many people are clicking read more, how many people are watching the videos, how many people are scrolling in the group, which is just as important. Remember, think about all the things that you see throughout the day that you might have a positive thought about or something that touches you, but you were busy or your kid pulled on your pant leg and you didn't have time to comment or respond or say anything, but you still had a moment of, ooh, that's interesting, or I'm glad I saw that. That's why that active member number is really important. It's like someone opening that email, right? That open rate is important, even if they don't reply. It's a similar way to look at it. So that was it. Those are the 4 things that I did. And we saw our active member percentage go from 17% to 52% in just 2 weeks. And that was it. I looked at the data and I was really clear on where I was and where I wanted to go. I asked thought-provoking questions, but I stepped it up a notch, being a little bit more polarizing, changing the way that I was asking the questions. I focused on inviting new members because new members always bring bigger energy. And then I made sure to go live. And that was it. That was the 4 things that I did to really drive that engagement. And it worked. And I shared it behind the scenes with my accountability group. And I'm sharing it behind the scenes with you guys. So if you are wondering how to revive your group, that will give you some really solid ideas. So thank you guys so much for being here and for listening. I hope that this was helpful. And don't forget to check out Joy's podcast at Called to Both. Don't forget to go grab your free guide, your free conversation starters that will help you double your engagement in 2 weeks. And you can find that at our show notes. This is episode 117. And also, you can take our quiz that will tell you exactly what is stopping you from growing an engaged community. So, thank you for being here. You guys are amazing. I always appreciate you. If this if this podcast was helpful, leave us a review. Let me know on Instagram over at Elizabeth.Henson or share it with a friend. It truly means the world to us and doesn't cost a thing. So have a great week and I'll see you guys soon.